count-controlled for loops mean that we know in advance how many times we want the loop to run. So this basic for loop has a seemingly complicated first line, but in actual fact it's not really. So in lowercase letters, we type the word for. Now in a set of speech marks, we're going to pass in 3 parameters. Each parameter is going to be separated with a semicolon for a loop structure. So the first thing I need is a loop counter. So int I, short for iterator, but it can be whatever we want to call it, so long as it's not already a Java keyword. And I'm going to set its initial starting value. Let's make it 1. The next parameter is what is the condition that's going to control the loop? In other words, basically how many times will this loop run? And we do this based on the value of our loop counter I. So keep running this loop so long as I is less than or equal to, say, 10. And then finally, we need to either decrement or increment the value of the loop counter. In other words, we need to change the value of I each time the loop runs. If we don't do this, well, we're going to get a syntax error. That's why I've got a slight red squiggly line there. But we're also going to create an infinite loop if indeed it potentially did run. So the way I'm going to increase the value of I is just go I plus plus. So the first time through the loop, we set the value of I to be 1. I plus plus, the second time through the loop, has incremented the value of I from 1 to 2. The third time through, from 2 to 3, and so on and so on. Now to get rid of this red squiggly line, I've just got to add one more thing, and that's the opening curly brace. And you see it's all gone. Now what are we going to repeat? Well, we're just going to put one line of code. We're going to go system.out.println. And what are we going to output? We want to output the value of I. Oops, and then that was a semicolon. So if I run my code now by pressing F5, we'll see the numbers 1 to 10 output. If we change the value of I and go and leave the condition, the loop will still run so long as I is less than or equal to 10. This time when we run the loop is actually executed 11 times. First time through, the value of I is 0. Second time through, 1, then 2, then 3, and so on. And on the 11th time through the loop, 0 through 10 is 11 times, we're going to output 10. But what if we want to output these numbers, maybe we want to output all the odd numbers between 1 and 10. So I is going to be the first odd number. I'm going to go up to 10, and because it's equal to, less than or equal to, 10 is potentially included. But this time, instead of incrementing by 1, I'm actually going to change the value of I by 2 each time. I save that, press F5 to run it. This time we get the odd numbers 1, 3, 5, 7 and 9 between 1 inclusive and 10 inclusive, but because 10 is an even number, obviously it's not going to be output. If however I change the value of I from 1 to 0 the first time through, this time we should be outputting all the even numbers 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 and so on. Now what happens if we wanted to do a sort of countdown type of approach? What do you think we'd need to change? It's important that we still have the 3 components inside the parentheses in our first line of the for loop. However, so far we've seen the value of I being 1, increased to 3, increased, or starting at 0, increased to 2, increased. So if we wanted a countdown effect, well, let's change the value of I to be a higher number. I can click on it. So I starts at 10. That means we need to change our condition. Keep running this loop so long as I is, let's say, greater than 0. And we don't want to increment the value of I, whether it's by 1 or more. We actually want to decrement. We want to take 1 off the value of I. So I minus minus. Well, if we wanted to increment, by default is 1. We go I plus plus. To decrement, we go I minus minus. If I save it and run it, we'll see now the numbers are output in reverse. Same as if I want to say output all the, let's say, even numbers, I would just change I, take the value of I, minus equals instead of plus equals 2. The first time through the loop, I will be 10 because we set it to be 10 in this first parameter. Then we're going to take 2 off 10 to get 8. Take another 2 off, 6, and so on and so on.